Thank you so much tonight for taking your time to join us as we talk all about the very important transition of students from the high school arena into the college university arena and all the things that we need to understand as both parents. And hopefully we have some students here to be able to understand what we need to have set up and how to properly advocate in this process. So just a couple reminders as we go through the slides tonight. We are going to ask just for kind housekeeping that we all stay muted, and your questions are definitely welcome, but if you could put them into the chat, we will be monitoring them and then we will be sharing them when appropriate. If we have time at the end, we will address some of those questions, or we will, happily direct you to our kind speakers tonight to help facilitate your answers. So I'll start out by introducing myself. So my name is Megan Pinchbeck. I am the owner of Dyslexia on Demand, and I am going to be your, I guess you could say, MC tonight, along with Brandy Blaylock and Lisa Patton. They're going to be here as tech support, and they may jump in if they're seeing any questions in the chat or we run into any technical difficulties. Hopefully we don't. But if you're not familiar with Dyslexia on Demand already, we are the premier provider of one-on-one virtual individualized dyslexia therapy. And what makes us extra special is that we exclusively use the highest tier qualified dyslexia professional, which is certified academic language therapist. And we're really honored to be able to bring you this webinar tonight. So here's a quick video from our sponsor.
Dyslexia on Demand uses only the highest trained dyslexia therapists, and it's all one-on-one and individualized to your child's needs. The best part is that it doesn't matter where you're located because it's all virtual. Visit us at dyslexiaondemand.com to learn more. Dyslexia on Demand.
I don't think we need it twice, but all right, so really quickly, a couple announcements and one shameless plug, and that is for the Don't Call on Me podcast. I am the co-host of that podcast, and we basically tell stories of dyslexia. We interview individuals with dyslexia. We interview parents of children with dyslexia, parents and children together. Our mission is to really encapsulate the emotional journey of those with dyslexia and make sure that we, really mark their stories. The objective is that our listeners can realize that they're not alone, either in their fight, potentially with the school district, in their personal struggles with dyslexia, and really just to show that there really is a silver lining at the end of the journey. All right, besides that, I wanted to announce just some of the offerings over at Dyslexia on Demand. So if you're like many parents, we know that summer is a really critical time for two things when it comes to literacy, right? It's either a time for regression or it's a time to make hay while the sun shines, meaning we have time to make some really big gains during that time so that we can set up for a better school year in the hopes of kind of not repeating some of the yuck that may have happened the year before. So Dyslexia on Demand really does have something for everyone, whether or not you have a child with dyslexia or not. We have three kind of main options when we look at summer. Of course, you can start, kickstart your dyslexia therapy journey in that summer and really make some, large strides in dyslexia therapy. We can also continue dyslexia therapy that might be happening on a school campus. And so in those months when everything kind of stops and pauses, we can really keep working on that reinforcement of weak areas, or, just address any of the skills that we may choose to move forward with permission from their school-based therapist. or we might just be targeting a skill. So regardless of whether or not you have dyslexia or not, there may be a weak area skill, and that's a great opportunity to work with what I call the black belt of reading and spelling, right? So where you get the most prescriptive and targeted support. So please, if you're interested in any of that, check us out at dyslexiaondemand.com. And then we have a couple other webinars that are coming up as part of this Beyond the Letters series. And we're really excited about these. These are a little bit different than our norm. Of course, all webinars that we do here are for free, but the next two that we have coming up, first of them, it really is going to be a book club. So instead of it being a typical Tuesday night where we all get together and present, this is going to be broken into 3 different meetings where we take Dr. Sally Shaywitz's Overcoming Dyslexia book, which can feel really daunting as a parent, but we say that's the dyslexia Bible. That's the one that is the most impactful, usually for parents and therapists alike, and go through it. And all of the discussion is going to be led by certified academic language therapists. So it really is going to take that big overwhelming book and break it down into something a lot more palatable, but also led by a dyslexia professional. And the second one is also really exciting to us, and that's Mindset Matters. We are basically bringing in a motivational speaker, and the target audience are kids. Instead of it being parents where we're educating you on something related to dyslexia, we're bringing in someone who is very motivational, who has been on Netflix series, and who her personal brand and story and what she attributes to her success is the perseverance she learned through dyslexia. So this is really for all ages, and we think it's a great back to school opportunity. So setting us all up with the right mindset to move forward and have success in that school year. So if you're interested in either one of them, everything we do is for free, and they are on the Dyslexia on Demand website under webinars. All right. So whether or not, no matter like where your child is or what you need, just with Dyslexia on Demand in general, you really have the gold standard. We really address the entire child. So it's not just the language therapy piece. We really take heavy consideration and emphasis onto the emotional side of dyslexia. And we're all CALTs, top tier dyslexia professionals, but we also try to make this a community experience, not just for the kids, but also for the parents. So we offer tons of educational support. We are all here as an office of CALTs who are all here just to support our parents and alongside our students. So either it's webinars like these, we have monthly support meetings for parents where we're talking about a specific topic. And we're just a really tight-knit community. And so we welcome you to check us out. But on that note, that's kind of part of what we're doing tonight. And I would like to, go ahead and get started with our presentation and introduce our main speaker tonight. So Catherine Scholl is going to be basically the perfect combo of people to talk to you tonight. Not only is she an advocate, but she is a former special education teacher. She is a certified dyslexia specialist, an educational advocate, like I said, but also so important, she is a parent of children with dyslexia. So she really understands that experience of, you as a parent. So not only does she hold a master's degree in education and multiple certifications, she also is Orton Gillingham trained. And I think that is super, super important to understanding everything. She specifically is going to be focusing in on assessments that really look at the profile of a child with dyslexia and how we can very specifically target what needs to happen for that child. And that's something that's really cornerstone here at Dyslexia on Demand. So we really understand the importance of it, and we're really honored to have her tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to her.
Hi, everybody. I am going to share my screen right now. It's really nice to be here to speak with everybody and talk about a very important topic, which is navigating the transition to college from high school as a dyslexic student. Moving from high school to the higher education is a big step for any student, but for kids with dyslexia, it comes with unique challenges, as we all know. So we're going to explore some strategies for success, including understanding your rights, finding the right school, accessing accommodations, self-advocacy, and utilizing some campus resources that a lot of parents just don't know about. So whether you're a student preparing for the transition, a parent supporting your child, or an educator guiding students through this process, I hope to provide you with practical insights to make this journey a lot smoother. So again, the introduction, we're going to talk about transitioning to college. And in college, it's very important to note that you become the advocate of your own needs. And understanding the available supports and self-advocacy is really key to success, because a lot of students, come from this high school, it's kind of a bubble. They've been with a lot of the same teachers, and the teachers understand, and your rights change they're very different from high school to college. So we're going to kind of go through that. And I first wanted to talk a little bit about my connection and, why this is so dear and near to my heart, because my daughter Ellie is a dyslexic student, also ADHD, and she was classified or officially diagnosed in elementary school. And so we've kind of been through this journey together with many different transitions. And I think that the transition from high school to college was the most challenging, but also showed the light at the end of the tunnel of all of those years of learning the skills that you need. And the biggest one being self-advocacy. So my connection to this whole process is my daughter Ellie, and she's going to kind of talk a little bit about how she prepared from high school going into college in this short little video.
Hi, my name is Ellie Scholl, and I'm a freshman at Elon University, where I major in nursing. As a dyslexic learner, I knew that the change from high school to college was going to be a challenge, and I knew that advocating for myself would be crucial in my success. Before classes even began, I reached out to the disability services to understand the process for securing accommodations so I could go to my very first class and know I had everything I needed right from the start. Equipped with documentation from my previous evaluations, I scheduled a meeting to discuss my needs, including extended time on exams, access to audiobooks, note-taking support, and personal testing rooms. Between the move from high school and college, I felt confident enough to move forward without some of my prior accommodations in order for me to grow more as a student and as a dyslexic learner, but always knowing I could take it upon myself to add in accommodations if I saw fit in the future. I always emphasize on how my dyslexia affects my memory, processing, reading, speed, and comprehension, using specific examples from my past academic experiences when discussing my needs. I explained that these accommodations weren't about an advantage in my education, but simply about creating an equitable learning environment. Equitable learning environment. With persistence and clear communication, I was able to secure the necessary accommodations. It hasn't always been smooth sailing, so I've learned to build relationships with all my professors in order to always have the conversation relative in our minds. This experience has reinforced my ability to self-advocate, which is a skill I have come to understand will serve me well beyond the classroom.
Okay, so as you can see, she was not very comfortable doing that. She has a lot of anxiety with speaking, but she always does love to help other students like her to give good pointers. And she really has approached every obstacle with determination, and really has learned to find solutions. And so I just kind of wanted to start the presentation off with that, because this is kind of the end portion of that transition piece from high school to college. What does it look like once they get to college? The high school portion is very tricky. And let me see. Okay. Sorry about that. So the first part about the transition piece is that understanding your rights, because your rights in high school look very differently than they do in college. So Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, the IDA, that's going to ensure that the students in K-12 receive a free and appropriate education in the least restrictive environment through the IEPs that our students get. And so their right is under a legal document that guides their needs. It guides their accommodations, their goals, their objectives, and the schools are held to that document. The other part of the law is the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, which ensures equal and reasonable accommodations for students with disabilities in higher education. So this ADA is going to guide what happens at the college level. So it's important to know the difference. And Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, which came out in 1973, that is supposed to prevent discrimination based on a disability in any program that receives federal funding. So Section 504 can cover both our high school and our college, and it can cover through transition. And, in the climate that we're in right now, there are lots of discussions on what this looks like moving forward. And, but it's important to know that at the high school, we're talking about, or any K through 12, we're talking about the IDA through our IEP. Student can also have a 504 protected under the ADA. When we move into college, it's only under the ADA. And so a lot of the accommodations are going to look differently. And that's why it's really important to know the difference. So this is kind of a nice little graph showing you the key differences. I'm a very visual learner, so I thought this might be helpful. So when we're comparing our high school, our IEP 504 to the college, which is the ADA and Section 504, we already talked about the legal protections. Support system that looks very different. Our students are being, they're being mentored and they're being directed and guided by teachers, case managers, parents. We all know this. We are very involved. We're helping with the emails. We're checking their Google Classrooms every night or whatever they're using for their executive functioning organizational piece. So that support system is really intact. And it's the same support system that these students have been used to while they've had IEPs or 504 plans. When we move over into the college sector, the student is really on their own. And so all those self-advocacy skills that we've been working on with them all of these years really come out, and they have to come into play because they are on their own. And once they turn 18, and even in high school, if they turn 18, we know that they have to give us permission to be able to speak at these meetings. And a lot of times the disability services does frown upon that at a college level, and they will tell mom and dad or whoever is the parent, taking care of everything, you need to step back a little bit. Accommodations. Through our IEP, by law, the school has to be following the accommodations that are listed in that legal document. The school provides them, and the case manager is usually the one who guides, making sure the accommodations are taking place, making sure that the work is modified if that's listed, related services, all those fun things that fill those 18-page IEPs, the school is in charge of taking care of. Not the case when you get to college. That's all gone. None of that is there anymore. Yes, we look at it as a guide moving into college, but it does not have to be honored. And so the college may provide access, and they may provide accommodations and modifications. Every institute is different, and that's why choosing the right place, or I hate to use that word right, but the correct place for your student is so important, because as we know, students with disabilities all look very different. They're, what may work for my dyslexic student may not work for your dyslexic student. And as opposed to in high school, when the teachers had to follow these accommodations, in college, they do not. And so we'll kind of get into what that process looks like. And then the independence piece, right? Our goal is during high school, when they start getting those transitional goals, is to slowly release them, do that whole scaffolding where we're helping them and we're modeling it, and then we slowly release them so they can do these things on their own in college, because nobody's going to be making sure their accommodations are being followed. The student has to meet with the professors, and they have to tell them what their needs are. And so it's a very big change for a lot of students, especially if they've had a lot of help and support through the high school years. So again, understanding the disability services in college, there is no IEP, that is gone. We do a transition plan usually at the end of senior year in high school, but there are accommodations available. Um, each school has a disability service office. I'm going to be completely honest. Some are really great, some are mediocre, and some are not so great for our students with dyslexia. And so that's where the research comes in and figuring out what looks best. Accommodations very common in a college setting, which your students are probably used to already, is extended time of tests, note-taking assistance, access to the materials, either through peer notes or they have a lot of now apps that they can use for this. The reduced course load option, I know some of our students at the high school level do get that. At college, it's a little less common to have that in your accommodations. And even if it is in your accommodations, the professor may give pushback on that. So how do we prepare for this big transition from our IEP and our college life? So how we started in high school, if any of you do have high school students, I'm sure you're aware of the transition goals. And that is now, it is a law that any student, so federally, it's any student that is 16 or above has to have transition goals written into their IEP. It's usually at the very end of goals and objectives. So they may have reading goals, and then you'll see writing goals or counseling goals. The transition and post-secondary goals usually come last. And those types of goals look at giving the students experiences, and a lot of times they'll do questionnaires on what they think they want to do post high school. Are they college bound, or are they trade school bound? And so it kind of lets the student self-reflect on their strengths and weaknesses. I mean, this is what it's supposed to look like. And so that's what these transition goals are all about. And their case manager typically works on these transition goals starting at the age of 16. And it looks just, they do the progress marks just like they do their academic goals, progressing, not progressing, however your state codes it. Now, I know here in Connecticut, we start these transition goals as early as 13. And so they start with the questionnaires, and then they work into if the child needs, training or any other goals, or they have other weaknesses, they kind of have a few years to work on those. So it just depends on the state. So you have to check your state to see when these transition goals start. My advice is to make sure that the student has these, and that they're not just looking pretty on the paper, that they're actually being looked at and discussed. This is your time as a parent to ask these questions. How is he or she doing on the transition goals? What does this look like to her or him? What are you discussing? A lot of times by the time they get to junior year, these transition goals start talking about, how are you preparing for the standardized test? Are you preparing? Are you getting, outside tutoring, or have you started your college list? What does that look like? I know in Connecticut, we have Naviance, which is a platform where the students start that process. So a transition goal may be, student, is able to log on to Naviance and add a school and a profile, and get 3 facts about the school. So that's kind of just an idea of what that may look like. So we start that in high school. These goals are going to prepare them for life after high school, focusing on the post-secondary employment. Some of these goals may be employment goals. and independent living when appropriate. So if the student is going to be in the IEP and in under IDA up to the age of 22, you will see a lot of independent living goals there. The goals are always based on the strengths, the interests. They're usually, we have a conversation with the student. We talk about what they want to work on. And like every other IEP goal, they have to be specific, measurable, and realistic, and we have to provide progress monitoring on them. Way too often we see these goals be ignored, and they're just put in there because by law they have to be, but we really have to stay on top of that. And this is a great time to start teaching that self-advocacy piece with the student, and having them even reach out and say, can we work on my transition goals? Because I'm not able to keep up when we're talking about it in class, however they're talking about it. Can we go back and revisit? And it's overwhelming. These transition goals can be very overwhelming when we're talking about college with dyslexic learners. So it's just important to know that they are there. So we're doing the transition goals in high school. We're start getting them to think about what they want to do post high school, right? The wheels start turning, sometimes not until 10th grade, 11th grade, sometimes not till the end of senior year. But if they are college bound and we know that that's where they're going to be going, it's important to start these questions. Do I want a large school, medium school, or small academic setting? And that's a really good place to start, because you're doing that through visits. You're kind of giving them a feel. Climate plays a huge role in this as well. From the video, you could see my daughter is in North Carolina. I'm in Connecticut. I was not happy that she was going all of those states away from me, but wasn't my decision. She wanted warm. She wanted small. And obviously she didn't want to be close to home. So that hurt my heart a little bit, but I'm over it, I think. And then the other thing is, what accommodations do I absolutely need to succeed in college? You ask, I worked with high school students for a long time, and when I ask them this question, immediately they all say, I don't need any accommodations. I'm going to do great. I'm going to do fine. And then you start like having that conversation. Oh, okay. So tell me, what accommodation did you use in chemistry yesterday? Right? Do you think chemistry, or do you think your science class in college is going to be any different? You think it's going to be easier? And then so you have to try and pull that out of them so they start thinking, right? Because we're trying to make them think on their own and self-advocate for themselves, as opposed to us just like kind of feeding them what we think they need. And that accommodation piece is huge, right? So if they're already getting extra time, as far as double time or time and a half in high school, chances are we're going to want to start off with that accommodation in college, like right off the bat. I'm a true believer in give them more at first. If they don't use it, we can take it away. Once you get into college, it's harder on the student to then add stuff in and prove that they need it. And in that vein, when you are doing your annual IEPs for your high school student, I would advise that do the same thing. Give them, even if they only use it once a semester, give them what they think they need, what you think, and the case manager, as the PPT team comes together to discuss this, give them more, because you're using this documentation to then show your disability service coordinator that they've used those accommodations, and they're more likely to grant them if they've already had them. Then now all of a sudden the student comes and says after first semester and bio was a disaster because they didn't have enough time on labs. It's a lot harder now to ask for extra help at that point. So, ask for the kitchen sink and then take away and clean it out if you need to. And then again, does your child, a lot of the dyslexic learners, by the time they get to high school, the hope is that they've had amazing intervention, right? They've had the therapy, they've had the Orton Gillingham or whatever service that they've been getting. And they may not need a lot of disability services. I mean, that's kind of like in theory. In reality, unfortunately, that's not what it looks like, right? Especially if they have the anxiety piece, the ADHD piece, all those other things that we see occurring with our dyslexic students. So that robust disability service, we need to make sure that the school fits what the student needs. So now they've kind of figured out what region they want to be in, small, large, do they want a rah-rah school? Do they want a small series school? They figured it out. Now, how are they going to secure the accommodations, and what do they need to provide to the college? Typically speaking, and again, every institution is different, right? Based on if it's a private, if it's a state, and that's kind of a whole nother discussion on what to look for on state and private. But what you need to provide to the school right off the bat is your last complete evaluation. The more you have, the better. And I always tell my parents, my high school parents, try and get that triannual, that last triannual, done at their 16th year. Because the 16th year is when all of our fun formal assessments go from the younger age into the adult version. Especially your cognitive profile, right? So when you're looking at, in Connecticut, we use the WISC is the big one that we use. I'm not sure what the other, the other states may use a different one. That WISC really should be, have a full evaluation with the WISC on or right after the 16th birthday. And it's very powerful data to bring to the college. As far as the rest of it, the academic, we do the Wyatt a lot here. That can be done 16, 17, or even senior year. But you want to make sure that they're all within 3 years. And a lot of places, a lot of things that I'm reading now say that doesn't really matter, but I can tell you from experience, because I talk to a lot of the disability services, they really do want it within 3 years. And that's easy to do because in high school they should be having their triannual, otherwise they're out of compliance. So you're providing them with that. You're providing them with any documentation from their physicians. So if their physician is stating that there are other issues that are affected by the dyslexia that are going to affect their learning environment, an example of that may be if they're ADHD, and they need, to have to choose seating or to have seating close to the professor, or so it's always nice to have those letters from the physicians stating those needs. Those go a long way. So you're kind of giving them having everything printed out, have everything on your Google Drive to send digitally. You just get it in any form that you can, you have it. And then as soon as you make your decision on school, you make your appointment with the disability services. Because if you go in and have that discussion with them in June, it's going to be a lot more meaningful, and you're going to get a lot more attention from your case manager than if you're going in August with the same paperwork and the same, because they're slow in June. A lot of the students don't do it in June. They do wait till the last minute. So, I always recommend that you go in, you make a face-to-face appointment, you introduce yourself with your parents, and then say, okay, mom and dad, you can sit outside, and then you kind of go through the paperwork. And then that way they have it all in their portal, and then start, talking about what you need. It takes a little bit for them to process it and then approve the things you're asking for. And then also, once you make your schedule, a lot of these, for my daughter freshman year, she made her schedule at orientation. So she had it early, and she was able to find her professors, find their emails, and then send an email to the professor, letting them know, introducing them to her disability and the accommodations that she would be requesting. And that's how the professors know. Nothing from disability service goes to the professor. It's all about the student now communicating and self-advocating for what they need. A lot of the other things that we see in these schools that that have really robust disability resources, writing centers, those are huge for our dyslexic learners, right? Do they have a writing center that the student can go in at any time and have someone help them with a paper? Can they submit a paper to a peer that's volunteering at the writing center? You'd be surprised at how many schools do not offer this, or they don't offer it as part of tuition. That's the other kind of caveat to this, right? Is you want to find a school that has the disability resources that are included in your tuition. The Writing Center, peer-to-peer tutors. A lot of the students that are working with the Greek life or in an honors college, they do hours at the peer-to-peer tutors. So if your child's having, right off the bat, they're having a hard time with English, they can reach out and make appointments with these tutors. And the office hours are huge, huge. That's the big difference between a large school and a small school with our dyslexic learners, is that at the large schools, you're more likely to get TAs that are teaching those intro classes. You're not getting a lot of face-to-face. These TAs are students themselves, so they may not understand the needs of a dyslexic learner. So it's harder to get in with the office hours. At the smaller schools, there's less TAs. You're literally having face-to-face conversations with your professor if you want to on a weekly basis, right? You're building that relationship, you're building that communication that a lot of our students really need. So those are the three things that I really, when I speak to a disability center or office, these are the things I ask right off the bat. Like, what does this look like? How are you doing this? How are students accessing the resources that you have? I know just from personal experience with my daughter, who's a freshman, the Writing Center, the tutors, and the office hours she has used for every class so far. It's time consuming, but it's the only way that she can succeed. Okay, oopsie. Okay, so we've kind of talked about you found your fit, you've been accepted. Now what? I kind of went beyond that because I got excited about it in the last slide. But so now what happens? The self-advocacy skills. So when you're going to be talking to your professors, obviously you want to know what your classification is. I know in some states call it a classification, some states call it a diagnosis. In Connecticut, we can't call it a dyslexia diagnosis. We have to call it a classification. When you get to college, it's a diagnosis. And again, having that a formal letter from your physician is very, very helpful with that. So be able to explain what your strengths and weaknesses are, right? Know from your cognitive profile, if you're a visual learner, are you an auditory learner? Is your working memory much lower than your processing speed? And what does that mean, right? There's so much power in the knowledge of how you learn. And I think it's really important at the high school level to go through these reports with your child and explain to them what this means, right? What does the full scale IQ mean compared to our general ability index? And how does that affect me? It's really fascinating when you see kind of that light bulb go off in their head and they go, that's why I can't do, short answer questions, or I can't, uh, have 10 words in my vocabulary bank. And, so trying to explain to them what they look like as learners, and then giving them the power to be able to explain that to a professor, because it also shows the professor that they get it, right? They can advocate and they know what they're talking about. Be prepared to explain the accommodations to the professor and why you need them. My daughter had an accommodation, and the professor declined it and said, no, I don't offer that. And it took her almost all semester to have him realize why she needed it, and many, many conversations with him. And he saw that she was trying her hardest, going to tutoring, going to his office hours, and she was still failing the formal assessments, but doing amazing on the labs. And it was like, she tried to explain to him that the test format was just not, as a dyslexic learner, she couldn't do it, but she knew it. So she had to be creative on how she could show him. And so we got that written into the accommodation, that we could use different ways of showing her knowledge. Practice emailing and meeting with the professors. They should be doing that in high school. I tell all of the high school students that starting in freshman, sophomore year, as soon as you get that annual IEP in your hand, you're sending your accommodations to every professor, every teacher at that point in high school. It holds everybody accountable. So that way, if a teacher is not following the accommodation and they come back and say, I didn't know about it, well, Oh, really? Because I did send you this email on September 9th that explained all of my accommodations, right? Um, and speak up when you need something. Students have such a hard time doing this, but it is so important, right? If they do it in a respectful manner and they can back up what they're saying with facts, but that's such an important part. I kind of say this self-advocacy all the time, but that is just so huge. It's such a huge part of it. Okay. Um, so when you get there throughout the transition, another thing that we need to make sure that they're equipped with is time management and organizational skills. Again, a lot of dyslexic learners have this written into their IEPs in high school, right? We put it under that executive functioning piece on how do I use a planner? What does that look like? Nowadays, apps are really huge. But I've had lots of students that like the old school writing it down, saying it, writing it and reading it, the reiteration of the material. So it's important for them to know how they best can organize themselves. Um, and for an example, where my daughter goes, they have an amazing disability center, and they actually the first semester she met with her case manager and they did a weekly study schedule for her, and so to get her used to it. Because at college, it's very different than in high school, right? You get the syllabus in August, and then that's it. You're off running. And so they worked with her on what the syllabus looked like, how to read a syllabus, how to put it into the planner, how to make sure you know your final, your final date basically in August. Figuring out where to study, because college dorms are very loud. Everyone's really excited. So making sure you're finding that spot, and also making sure you're taking breaks, to not get so overwhelmed with all of this. And the transition piece really needs to have building a supportive community. So we talked about the disability service offices. I said request accommodations early, early, early. Ask about the tutoring and writing centers. Counseling and mental health services is huge as well. That at least in the colleges, a lot of colleges that I've spoken with, they will guide you through the disability service. So if you're already a student in the disability services, they can help guide you if you do need counseling for maybe anxiety or you're feeling a little depressed. So it's important for the student to know where those are and how to access them. And the advising and career services, which is separate of our disability case manager, right? This is your advisor making sure that you're reaching out to them and letting them know about your accommodations. Because if you have an issue with a professor, the first person you're reaching out to for protocol is your advisor. And so if they have no idea that you have accommodations, they're going to be like, well, how come I didn't know this? Why didn't you tell me? It's a little bit harder for them to now advocate for you if they don't know you. So I would say make sure you have that relationship, you reach out to them. And the strong emotional and social support system is, for any college student, whether you're a learning disability or ADHD, it's really that transition piece is trying to figure out and balance the social time and self-care. There's a lot of clubs. My daughter's a nursing major, so she has joined the nursing club. She's playing pickleball, so she's trying to kind of do a little bit of both. And seek out support if you're feeling overwhelmed. So key strategies, just to kind of sum all this up. I know I speak fast, so I'm so sorry. Register with disability services early. Practice the self-advocacy. Make sure that during high school you're practicing that, and you're speaking up for your needs. You want to make sure you're staying organized and using your time management tools, and you're taking care of yourself mentally and physically. And it is a very overwhelming transition, but it's important to embrace it and embrace the journey, and do your research, do your due diligence when you're trying to pick out this college, and embrace the whole process, because it really is a lot of fun. And kind of to tie all this in, I wanted to share a story of a student that I worked with for many, many years. And well, I'll let her tell her story, but I'm proud of her story. And I think it's kind of inspirational to a lot of kids who so many times throughout the journey of K-12 feel like I'm never graduating. I can't do this. I'm quitting, right? We've all heard that. We've seen the tears, the frustration at homework. And so this kind of story gives us a little bit of inspiration. So I'm going to introduce you to Kara. And thank you so much for having me. I hope that you were able to take away something from the presentation. And let's see, here we go.
Hi, I'm Kara. I'm a practicing attorney in New York City. I went to Fordham Law School and University of South Carolina undergrad. I have dyslexia and ADHD, and throughout my life, I've had to learn to be an advocate for myself because if I don't do it, no one's going to. In college, I was given time and a half, and I realized in order to succeed, I needed double time, and I had to advocate for myself there. In law school, I received double time on all my exams. I took my exams in a smaller testing room so that there's less distractions. And I had to advocate for myself to get class notes in some of my classes in order to make sure that I was going to be able to succeed, because sometimes I couldn't focus in certain classes if there was too much going on. But I would go back through the notes that another student took after class to make sure that I didn't miss anything. I also had to advocate for myself to get PDF versions of my textbooks. Law textbooks are obviously very dense. And sometimes when I was reading them, I couldn't stay focused. And with my dyslexia, it took me 3 times as long as other students to read. So getting PDF versions of my textbooks made it easier to be able to get through the material because I could listen to the textbooks. There are different apps and websites that you can use to convert PDFs to be able to read to you. And that helped me immensely. And those are the main strategies that I use. If anyone ever needs any help with anything, I would be happy to talk to any students who are also in a similar boat as I was. Thanks.
So again, these students are able to do it, right? They have the tools and the strategies, and they're able to advocate for themselves. They can have a very successful transition from high school to college, and as we see, and beyond. So again, thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Catherine. You've given so many insights to parents, and I've got to say that so much to think about in a mindset shift, even for parents, right? As we prepare our kids to get ready to move into the next phase, and especially that self-advocacy. I have a child who has already finished college, but she didn't have any special needs. My next one coming up is in 7th grade, and you've given me some ideas as to how to help start to facilitate that. So thank you so much. I know that you're short on time, that we have about 10 minutes to work with. You have received several questions, so if you don't mind me choosing a couple, is that okay?
Sure.
Are you sure you have time?
I've got about 3 minutes. Yeah.
Oh, 3 minutes. Okay. Well, then tell you what. One of the questions I think is really important, and it has to do with homeschool parents, actually. So a child is tested, has a test, right? But what would you recommend to that parent as a homeschool educator preparing them for college, being that they don't necessarily have that track record of accommodations that they've used? Do you have any tips for that?
Well, I would definitely make sure I do the due diligence of research on visiting the colleges and asking a lot of questions to the disability services office, and seeing kind of what kind of culture there is. Each college has a very, very different culture, even within what professors will approve as accommodations and not approve, it really is institute by institute. So as a homeschooled parent, be documenting how your student learns the best, and if they're visual, if they're auditory, and what kind of accommodations they think they would need in a more structured setting.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. Everyone, Catherine does have to run. Our presentation is not over yet, but we are extremely appreciative. If you had a question that was not answered, we are going to be emailing out this recording to everyone. We will include Catherine's email address so that you are able to contact her directly with your question, along with Kian, who we're about to hear. So thank you so much. Feel free to jump out and go address what you need with your daughter.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, guys. So next up tonight is Kian Calabrese. He is both a neurodivergent himself with ADHD and dyslexia, and he is also a representative from the Neurodiversity Alliance. And if you have not heard of this organization before, it is a wonderful one. I'm sure he will share a little bit more about that. But he is himself a current college student with plans to major in chemistry and psychology. And he's also an active mentor and speaker ambassador for the Neurodiversity Alliance's Eye to Eye program. So he is kind of our great transition from Catherine's wonderful information to us asking him those direct questions as to how he has directly applied some of this information, kind of in real time. So thank you so much for being here, Kian.
Thank you so much. So like you said, I have dyslexia and ADHD. I'm a freshman at Carleton College, and I've been working with the Neurodiversity Alliance for 8, maybe 9 years now. Yeah.
That is so awesome. That ability to be able to present to others, speak to others, to really help to empower them and understand that really important message that they're not alone. So, well, we're going to go ahead and jump straight into the questions. A lot of these questions are developed based on what Catherine presented tonight so that you can hear his firsthand knowledge and experience about it. And that first one is, what factors did you consider when choosing a college, and how did your dyslexia influence that decision?
Yeah, so I'm definitely going to be echoing Catherine a lot here. But so I, first of all, decided to go to a smaller school just because I wanted to have more of those one-on-one closer connections with my professors, TAs, other people that are going to be supporting me, and just making sure that I'm not falling between the cracks. And I also did a lot of different research in making sure that there were good accommodations, that the accommodations were going to be what I needed, and I would get, of course, accepted. I think you're muted. Sorry.
Thank you so much. All right, if you can move to the next slide, please. How did you secure accommodations in college, and how did it compare to your experience in high school? I think this is a really important question as to what has to be provided versus what you're experiencing, in terms of high school, and then what you experienced in college.
Yeah, so like Catherine said, in high school, it was very automatic. I supplied my IEP, I supplied my 504, and I got accommodations. But once I got into college, before I got to college, I had to send a whole application with my evaluation, and give them reasoning, had to give them, tell them which accommodations I was asking for, what and why I was going to need them, and had to have a whole interview of why I needed them, and then I would get accepted.
So did you feel like you had to do a lot of defending that need, or after your explanation, was it relatively seamless to receive these?
Besides just the interview, it was a little defensive, but pretty seamless. Not too difficult, but that may just be my institution.
Fair, right? That does have a lot to do with the university that you chose. That's great to know. And then when it came to the actual implementation, I'm kind of freestyling here a little bit, but I'm out of curiosity. When it came to the actual implementation in classes, because it's one thing to talk to disability services, but then it's another to actually have that upheld by all of your individual professors. How did you feel that experience, find that experience to be?
Well, what I did is before I started the class, or within the first week, I would make a one-on-one meeting with each of my professors to explain to them, hey, I'm dyslexic. I'm going to be using my accommodations, like extra time, like taking tests or assessments in like a reduced distraction environment, just making sure that I was getting the feedback that I needed and that I could start to build up a good connection with them.
Mm-hmm. That's such great advice, and especially as parents, so that we can really make sure that years before we are prepping our kids to be able to confidently advocate, because the amount that it sounds like you definitely need to do and apply in the university setting is such a drastic change. So what tools, technology, or resources, have been the most helpful in managing your coursework and staying organized in college?
The two that I've found most useful are Google Calendar and Read and Write for Google. Google Calendar, I went to a bunch of different universities and colleges, and whenever they had a panel of students, they would always ask, like, what technology are they using? And they would always say Google Calendar. And I disregarded that. And I'm like, okay, I don't need that. Once I actually got to college and used it, I was like, wow, this is incredibly helpful. It helps me to manage my time. Before I would be like willy-nilly, I would do homework like really late in the night or early in the morning, but just planning out my time like, okay, 6 to 7, I'm going to eat dinner. 7 to 9, okay, I'm going to get some work done. And then 9 to 10, I'm going to read, and then I'm going to go to bed. Just planning out your time and making sure that like you know how to be successful and when you're going to be free and when you're going to not be free.
And I think that's advice a lot of adults could also take. So that's wonderful. And then also, can you speak to Google Read and Write?
Yeah. Sorry about that. So Google Read and Write has the ability to take like PDFs and then read them out to you, or just like any body of text that you select. And then also it has a very useful dictation feature. So that, and then also just access to audiobooks for longer, like you said, scientific, since I'm doing chemistry, more of scientific articles.
That's awesome. So there is, just for parents who aren't as familiar, there are tons of different tools that can do a lot of those similar things. But honestly, Kian, it's great to hear that this extension tool in Google is that helpful, that there's really no need to look elsewhere. And that's also true for adults. So how did you advocate for yourself when working with professors and the Disability Services Office to ensure you received the support you needed? And we've kind of addressed some of that, but do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, like I said before, self-advocacy is extremely important. Making those one-on-one connections with professors, TAs, just telling them like, I'm gonna need extra support. If I do need it, and then just making sure that, yep, I'm going to be taking my test in a different place. And communication is important with them. Yeah.
Yes, I agree. That open line of communication, because, you know, so many universities, at least the university I went to, was enormous, and you really feel like a number. So when you really create yourself as an individual in that professor's eyes, it's so much more helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, can you flip to the next slide, please? Oh, I'm sorry, it already is. What advice would you give to high school students with dyslexia who are nervous about transitioning to college and managing academic expectations?
Okay. I have 3 big things. So it's going to be crazy. It's going to be hectic, but I know you can do it. It's going to be hard. It's going to be weird, like not, especially for me, not just going home and having a place to do my work. But if you can make it through the first week, you can make it through the first month, first year, then you're done. You got it. But second, make those connections with professors.
Yeah.
That is extremely important, especially for me, just making sure that you have those connections to people that are going to be able to support you. And then third, just try not to get like very behind, because it is much harder to like catch up in college than it is in high school. Yeah.
I think that's really, really important. That's a great piece of advice. Especially just with so many of our students with dyslexia have executive function challenges. And next thing you know, it kind of snowballs. I think that for non-neurodivergent students in college also. So I think that's really important. So beyond academics, how have you found or built a support system on campus? And what role has it played in your success?
Yeah, so of course I have a good friend group, and what we like to do is we like to do all working individually while in the same group. We work on our individual assignments. We're big fans of the Pomodoro method, 25 minutes of working, 5 minutes of rest or talking. That's been good to stay social while also getting all your work done. Also just exploring other things on campus, like going to see lectures. My college has chemistry lectures every week. That those like it gives you an experience to see like what you can use this like your success towards. Just in college, there's going to be a lot of things that are not offered like in high school. A lot of experiences that you wouldn't be able to see elsewhere. So just like exploring those, and also like I started college having like no idea what I was interested in doing. I took a chemistry class because I thought it was going to be interesting. And now I'm working for the department, like grading other people's like work to like support professors. So just try new things.
Yeah, totally. It's a great opportunity to explore. And I think that no one's supposed to necessarily know what they want when they arrive at college. So I think that you're not out of the norm. So I think this is a really wonderful time to share with our audience about the Neurodiversity Alliance, who they are, what kind of work, how they supported you, and then how you chose to in turn support that organization.
Yeah, so the Neurodiversity Alliance is an organization that like has a bunch of different sections. So we have like speakers like I am. There's a mentoring program called Eye to Eye Mentoring. And then there's the more like neurodiversity clubs on like in high school and in college. So what the Neurodiversity Alliance kind of did for me is within their mentoring program, I was like a mentee there for 3 years. Then I mentored students for 2 years, and then I ran our whole chapter at my high school for another 2 years. So that's kind of what they did for me, and then how I'm kind of giving, not giving back, but continuing my work with them is now I'm now instead of like working in their mentoring program, I'm working as a public speaking ambassador, talking to groups like this. Yeah.
That's super awesome. So, out of curiosity, were you at a very large high school, or what happens if your child is in a very small school or small school district, similar to my children? Are there opportunities for these kind of connections and to be a mentee to someone like you, if you're not part of a really huge high school or university?
Yeah. Yeah. So I wasn't a member of a super massive high school, but you just have to find somebody like a neurodivergent student and have them like start the actual or have a member of like the staff start a club or a mentoring organization on campus, and then getting like building up those connections with
Yeah.
like a middle school.
I bet that's a really awesome opportunity to start practicing those self-advocacy skills, which we know are going to be so important in college.
Most definitely, yeah.
All right. Is there anything else you would like to share? Not to put you on the spot. I know we finished all of our questions tonight, but anything else you'd like to share with the audience? Or is it okay if we pass out your email, if possibly
Yeah.
some of the children of our parents tonight, or if there are any students here would be interested in connecting and asking personal directed questions?
Definitely, yeah. 100%.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, well, we really appreciate everyone. I know that there are some questions that did not get answered by Catherine. Kian, you didn't have any specific questions that I noticed, unless any of my counterparts noticed them, but we really appreciate your time tonight. Like I said before, we are going to be emailing out the recording to this. Many people sign up for this just to watch the recording. And so that's the beauty of technology nowadays. But in that, we will also include both Catherine and Kian's emails if you had any questions that didn't get answered tonight. But thank everyone so much for taking the time to do this tonight.